Okay. All
All
right.
right, hello.
How's it going?
No. Start again. How's it?
How's it?
Okay, flip. All right, so we're
Okay.
back. And
Yeah.
if anyone's wondering what the heck we've been doing, well, I'll tell you what we've been doing. We've been recording stuff and it's still sitting on my computer. So, yeah, and Nick's been on holiday doing his double cruise around the Mediterranean, and
Yeah.
everlasting sabbatical. He's sort of decided to cash his chips in now and experience his best life now. He does that,
That's
every
right.
now and again.
He's been influenced by this guy named Joel.
Joel, someone, Joel.
Joel. Is it like Oswald? Joe Oswald? Joe.
I don't know, but I feel like
Joe.
it rhymes with Mosteen.
Yeah, that's right. I think
Anyway,
something like that.
something like that. And so we thought we'd get down to the biz and get some stuff done. But yeah, I haven't actually uploaded any of it. So who cares about anything? Um,
Well, it's reassuring for me to hear that you still intend to upload that because
yeah.
I thought the picture I was getting on my end was that you just thought it was rubbish and didn't want to put it on.
I mean that there was that.
And there was that.
Yeah. I mean it was
It
like
didn't pass quality control.
no, I mean it was like it needs a bit of work, needs a bit of edit. So I've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
procrastinating. But yeah, we've got that. We actually we recorded a whole video explaining why we would not be recording videos. Remember that one? Everyone was saying hi to
Oh,
yeah, we did that whole thing.
yeah, we did
And
that. We
I
did that
didn't
whole thing.
I didn't upload that either. So
Okay,
I get
okay.
we just expect a lot of the listener. We
I
expect
tell you
them to
what, I don't know what our plan going forward is because I'm about to go camping as well, Mike.
no,
That's
yeah,
happening.
I know what I'm gonna do. I'm just going back to the old school two-age sojourner days where it was just a one sojourner,
It's the one,
the lonely pilgrim,
one two-edged sojourner.
the lonely pilgrim, one pilgrim, two ages. I can make that work.
It's just monologuing.
Yeah,
Going to be
especially
the
if we're gonna do the thing I think we're gonna do. Maybe we should have actually talked about this before we pressed record. But anyway,
we're going to do it though.
what do you what do you what do you want to talk about?
I got lots of things I want to talk about, Mike.
Okay,
I
tell
got
me some
so
of them.
many things.
Okay.
Well, I tell you what, one of the probably one of the overriding things that I keep coming back to, right, is that the more you look into, that phenomenon where the more you think about something, the less simple it becomes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the more research and work you do to understand a topic, often the less clear it becomes, the more complicated it becomes, the
Mm-hmm.
more you put effort into understanding somebody else's arguments, you realize that actually those arguments have some merit. That whole
Mm-hmm.
that whole
Mm-hmm.
vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so then you're left with saying, well, okay, I definitely have a take in the way that I see things, but I'm starting to lose confidence that the other guy is as wrong as I thought he was. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So now, how do you stop the drift into relativism? So
Mm.
as confessional Christians who want to maintain a strong confession of faith, but also as I don't know, intellectual Christians, academics, we want to. What is going on? You're lighting. There you go.
There we
I
go.
like
So,
Sepia Beck. Sepia Beck is good.
do you like that one?
No, no,
I
previous,
was just getting
previous,
super
prior.
bored with all your monologue there, and I thought, let me just start playing around with my preferences.
Yeah, and just think, everyone has to deal with this monologue for a while now.
Oh,
Sepia Beck,
just
Sepia
so
Beck.
tiring. I
There.
was
No, you just
no
went past it again.
like that one, black and white.
Black and
Nah,
white.
that one
No,
makes me look
that's
super
okay. That's
tan.
like campfire Beck, but I
Nah,
like
that one.
that
Nah,
sepia Beck. Yeah,
you
like it.
like sepia? That looks too lame. I can't do it.
Okay, go back to campfire Beck then. It does look like it's story time with Mike.
That one.
Yeah,
I like that one.
story time with Mike.
Yeah, it feels. My office is really dark, and I've got this ridiculous fluorescent light that my stupid camera keeps on bugging out. So I have to make
I
it plain.
can't
Yeah,
handle.
if
Can't
anyone is
handle.
wondering why I'm trying to be so cool with my like sepia campsite vibes, it's me just trying to do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So yeah. blah 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 yakety schmackety. I don't know. I can't even remember what you were saying.
Mike, you always make me feel so good about myself. The
Well,
listen, I'm thinking
I
about
mean,
knowledge.
are the Anglicans wrestling with this at the moment?
No, this isn't current affairs, Mike. You don't have to worry. I'm not I'm not talking about things that are relevant to other people. It's
Okay.
okay. It's okay. Calm down. I'm talking
Okay.
about me. This is me. This is my own
Okay. All right. All
process.
right. So, how do you stop the drift into what?
Relativism. Like,
Okay.
brew,
Yeah. Yeah.
like like the knowledge is a circle thing. Okay. And the
Yes.
bigger your circle gets, the more you realize you don't know. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that dynamic, but also like you take any issue, take whether it's baptism or whether it's um, soteriology or whether it's scripture and tradition. You start to look into it, and you look at all the like the social media wars going on, and you realize nobody really is given
Right.
who's very loud on social media has given a lot of thought to any of this, and then you start to look into all that, and you realize, jeepers, man, it is really really confusing sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
then you start to think, so what is the point of even having a strong conviction? Like what like I know that I'm going to be wrong about heaps of stuff, and I know that just if I just look back over the last 20 years of studying scripture and theology, you're going back to the lighting you bought again.
I've got this cool like circle light thing that I'm using right now. This
Anyway,
isn't
you go
even.
back to the last 20 years, last
Yeah.
20 years of how much has your view changed and your theology progressed in 20 years, right?
Not much. Pretty much hit it first time around.
First up, first up.
It was like reminds me of John Gill. He preached his first sermon and he came back to it. I think it was 50 years later.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, at least I got that right the first time. Didn't have to change a thing, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, wasn't that like Calvin's deal as well? Like, didn't he like um basically like preach some sermons and then write the institutes and then go back to it or something like that? And it's more or less exactly the
But
same.
he like evolved. I mean, the institutes, it started out like a pamphlet and then
Yeah. It just got
so
longer
it's got longer
because
and more crazy.
brevity is important.
That's exactly. I like that kind of brevity. It's good. Well,
Yeah.
that's warm. I feel warm right now with that one. This is like the red circle. Wow.
It's a red light back. I don't know. Don't know about that.
Don't you like this one?
Well, it's
Like
campfire back.
little
Yeah.
bit
Yeah, I
too
like campfire.
warm.
I told you it's campfire. It's just it's a bit. Ooh,
Oh, there we
it's a
go.
bit.
Nice
It's
orange vibes. Yeah. Okay. All
yeah.
right.
I
Cool.
think
Let's
that's
go.
nice. Yeah,
Okay.
it's okay.
Orange it is. Okay. So yeah, I mean that is because you always see everyone goes to university or seminary and they come back super nuanced and super relativist and they can't preach a sermon to save their life because it involves making dogmatic points about something. So this is why everyone thinks seminaries are cemeteries, you know,
Hmm.
on this exact point, because you go in a fundy, everything's nice and
Yeah.
clear. Yeah, you got it all
Yeah.
sorted out. And then you
Yeah.
take a philosophy class and it blows your mind. And then you're like, you know, all these
Yeah.
other things start coming into play. And it's not nothing, it's so it's like a good thing. I think it's a good thing in the
Can
sense
be.
that it's just killing that stupid sort of like narrow-minded dogmatism that's just not helpful. Even if you're right, you're wrong, and it's just like whatever. But then it feels to me like no matter how much I wrestle with the problem, there are those people that get it right. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, you just think about
Yeah.
those shining lights. I mean, we've just mentioned John Gill. I mean, it's not like they were uneducated.
No.
They had traversed the circle of human learning. They had really, maybe you might even say, they had done it twice over at that point. And so you couldn't. They weren't suckers. You weren't going to catch them by surprise. It's not because they just hadn't read that book or they just hadn't thought about that angle. They'd forged their way through the nonsense, and it seemed like you just got to do that's the hard work, and you got to come out the other side with balance where you need it, and with sternness where it needs to be as well. But that's just an incredibly difficult road, and that's why I think there's so few of those shining lights, and it's a much easier road just to go, oh well, who knows what's going on. um
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's almost like a kind of stopping halfway when the job is half done, like
I
because
think
you
so.
you get to the point where all the foundations are stripped away.
Mm.
and all the faulty foundations, and then you've got to rethink the whole thing. But then you don't really get that far. You don't really get to kind of relaying the foundations, building it back up again. You just get to the point where you're thinking, oh my goodness, like who can really know anything? And I think that, on the one hand, you've kind of, if you don't rebuild, relativism will come for you, because you're just going to be thinking there's nothing there to know. We can't know anything truly. I wonder if there's some stuff about so I was reading some Orthodox stuff on apophatic theology the other day, and about how actually we can't know God anyway. Like you can't really say anything truly about God unless the best you can do is say what God isn't, and then you can kind of hem in the reality a little bit like that. And I wonder if there is a kind of, and I guess it's also in Reformed theology. So Karl Barth was obviously famous for his emphasis on this, but you do kind of get it in Reformed theology as well. Even in Horton, there is this emphasis on, listen, we can speak truly about God, but not exactly about God. And so, but I wonder if there's a place, for kind of expanding that way of thinking to the whole realm, that actually just readjusting what our expectations are in terms of where we land on the kind of asymptote of truth. That we're not necessarily aiming to be like 100% correct as God sees it on every single issue.
So one of the things that helped me a lot, well, two things actually. I mean, I don't know that we'll be able to make a whole episode out of this, but I think this may be worth saying. The one was that you get, because we're talking like we're probably feeling this more than anyone in terms of generations before, because we're part of this kind of postmodern relativist culture where we're not just going to take the tradition. It's just like, I mean, it was easy before, and they just hand it over to the next guy. Tradition's a well-worn concept. You're like, okay, thank you, we get the value of that, and off we go. We keep running, hand it over to the next guy. And of course, we want to come along and be smart and deconstruct and reconstruct and all that sort of stuff. And so there's no, I think even the best of us, that want to be, let's accept tradition and all of that sort of thing, just by being who we are, just by growing up in the culture that we are. I think you are going to, you're going to find yourself wanting to find out why do we believe that exactly, and what's the thing behind that. And so I think there's this, you can't even run from it. There's this inevitable kind of deconstruction process that we all just have to, well, certainly in ministry, I found this in Wellington, for crying out loud, like where, it's just not going to work. Just go, well, we just believe that because we do, and because it's in the 1689, and because, that's reflecting the Bible. It's why, and give us some reasons and so forth. And so everyone just wants to know, so, and this is just the way that we think. So I think we just have to, it's part of almost just relevant, to use a lack of a better term, but just a contextualized ministry to be willing to work with a mindset like that and follow it yourself and deconstruct. But then it's just like you got to reconstruct again, and that's the hard part, and that's the whole reason we got tradition to begin with, because it's like really difficult to do that. And it took 2,000 years to construct to the first point, so it's kind of arrogant that you think you're going to be able to do it to begin with. So as long as I don't know, what I found has helped is just being aware of that process. Okay, now what I'm trying to do is deconstruct, reconstruct. I realize I'm doing it, this is just me being me. And so you just got to realize, okay, that's a really stupid idea, but let me just go for it. And, you might find some insights, but when it gets too difficult, bail out, go back to tradition, because it's too difficult to do, by yourself. But on the smaller things, you might be able to get some more value out of those kinds of thought processes. The other thing that comes to mind that's super helpful is, that bullseye of truth idea. Where do we draw the line on this? Where is it? How do we extend that concept? And I think the whole thing is, I can't remember exactly how you put it now, but we don't have to be right on every single. Yes, or just we don't want to be right on every single. We don't want to have to feel like we have to be right on every single point of truth. I think it's super important, especially in ministry, where it's like everyone's expecting you to know everything about everything, and you have to be able to say, listen, here's my opinion on that. It's in the Bible. It's it's a theological thing. So I should have maybe an opinion on it, but it's an opinion that I'm at like 1 out of 10 on,
Yeah.
Whereas there is this other thing that is the reason I'm a Christian. And if this wasn't the thing, then I would be, not a Christian.
Totally.
And therefore I am 10 out of 10 on this one, or
Yeah.
even there to go 9 out of 10, allowing for some, I might be wrong, whatever. But, even there, you're sort of, you're honing it into this bullseye arrangement where, you're just putting all your efforts, focusing on those things that you do have to be dogmatic on, and then really trying to make sure that you understand why you're dogmatic on those points. And then the rest just being content to go, yeah, I think so. Maybe this could be it,
Yes.
my best shot,
Yeah.
and what more can anyone expect,
So on that, okay, two things.
Yeah.
The one is that I'll just state them both now because I know I'm going to forget one in a minute. So, okay, so the one is the role of creeds and confessions in that process. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And the other is that phenomenon, like all of us and probably everyone who's bothered to listen to a podcast like this is definitely going to have looked into some stuff more deeply. Right. And that phenomena, it's the preacher's curse, where everyone who's preached and has done a book recently or thoroughly then goes to hear a sermon where the guy hasn't done as much work on it. And you're constantly hearing things slightly misrepresented, not wrong, but maybe just not quite as right as or quite as nuanced as you would like, right?
Like the poor Greek scholars that have to listen to seminary students slash pastors, who've got their 2 years and whatnot. And I mean, you hear them moan about it all the time. It's like, oh, could you please just shut up? Just don't say another thing about this language.
Yeah, exactly. Like a little knowledge is worse than no knowledge sometimes, because you just feel like you've actually gained some expertise when you haven't. And but it's that dynamic. So like you're listening to a sermon, you're like, that's not quite right, or I don't think he's quite nailed down the author's intent here in the same way that I would have, or something like that. You have to have a mechanism for realizing that even if he's not right, it doesn't mean that it's rubbish. Even if he's not right, doesn't mean that it's wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Like you can still listen to that, hear God's word, and hear truth from God's word, even if he hasn't, his author's purpose statement doesn't line up word for word with yours. And it's that space. You have to have that space. I think.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think that's just part of just growing. And I mean, that you would almost deal with any truth, whether it be from Christian circles or otherwise, common grace sources. You have to discern all around in the same way. You have to. I think it's a sign of maturity in that you are going to be able to do that. You're going to be able to say, okay, well, I wouldn't say it the same way, but I'm getting what you're saying and I'm working with what you're saying. But the other thing is, just in terms of the mechanism from the other way around, how do you, as a preacher, use Greek, just to continue that analogy, and or are they right? Like anyone who knows more means you should just not speak. Is that how it I mean, that doesn't seem like it could ever work. So the better way,
well, you end up with a very kind of elitist society that way.
And I think the way I've constantly processed this one, and it leads to two cautions. Like, if I want to talk about math, for example, like I suck deeply at math. Okay. I know that, and yet I would feel very confident saying 1 + 1 = 2. Like I don't care what kind of mathematician you are. Like, I will say that to your face. Here's an apple. Here's another apple. I see them. There they are. I'm taking them. I'm holding them.
2 apples.
Now I have 2 apples.
Although I did once have a mathematician tell me this technically isn't true. But
I don't know. But leaving the philosophical thing aside, right? Okay. And we're just working now with just plain old applied mathematics, right? It might be true that you could arrive at the, I don't know, this is perhaps where I should just shut up and not use any more analogy.
But you're going on to dodgy territory.
But let's say, all right, let's say that there might be another way to arrive at that answer or something, or there might be a more complicated calculation or equation that doesn't contradict that, but it's just a gazillion times more complex. Yet it relies on that same basic concept. So, then how I would approach it is I would say 1 + 1 does equal 2. And, based on this source, I believe that, if you continue along these lines, you could divide by the square root and blah, 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 and keep going. And this will happen then. And, but what you got to do with your language then is go, here's what I'm sure of. This is what I think you can come along with me. And we would hope that, we're using math as an analogy, but, we're talking Bible, we're talking theology, actually. So you'd hope that a pastor would know a little bit more than 1 + 1. So, you could extend that to, let's say, basic truths and or even complex truths that you're sure about. And then as soon as you're moving out of that 1 + 1 territory, it's not that, so it's not that you have to not speak. It's just know when you're moving out of that territory and then phrase it accordingly. Like, I'm not sure, I'm not a pro on this, but apparently according to this source, this guy, it seems to be a pro. Then whatever, but then my conclusions are measured based on this. I'm not entirely sure of that. So here's what I would say for sure, and here's what might be the case. And you can leave it to people to do their own homework on that.
So maybe an illustration of that is I once had to give a talk on God and science, right? So
yes,
does science mean that we no longer can we believe in science and God at the same time?
Mm-hmm.
And I know nothing about science. My science is on a par with my maths, which is on a par with the ground.
Pretty darn terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
1 + 1 equals 2.
But what I did do is I picked up I bought a philosophy of science textbook.
Yeah.
Okay. And I read it. And I read the philosophy of science textbook. And I based everything I said about science on the philosophy of science textbook that I read, which seemed to be an authoritative work, by the research that I did. And I said that. I said, I'm not a scientist. All of my information is coming from this work. It seemed to me like it was drawing authoritatively on the sources of science, about what science is, what its limits are, and all that kind of thing. And so all of my quotations from there. So I'm acknowledging, in one sense, I have a little bit of knowledge, and I'm basing all of what I'm saying on that little bit of knowledge, and therefore it needs to be taken with, not quite with a pinch of salt, but in a measured way.
Yeah, just in a measured way. Yeah, exactly. And that doesn't, I like that, because it doesn't mean that you're going, okay, well, here's my circle, I can only ever make statements like 1 + 1. No, to the degree that you do the work and you put in the effort and come to that same level of conclusion, or fine, broaden that out. But I think the positive side of the postmodern thing, if there is one, is that it's a bit more honest sometimes, because it is just bored. I mean, we all know the proof texting, Puritan era, where everyone's just like, well, this says this, so leave it alone, drop it, and everyone's like, really? Does it? Yes, it does. That's it. Done deal. Otherwise, you're gone. You're gone if you say otherwise. And that's just that was just, I don't know. That just creates something that's ultimately, it might lead to a more temporal security, but ultimately, it's gonna leave you on shaky ground. So that's not really the way either. And I think there is an honesty in just going. I think the creation debate is another one for me. You mentioned the science and theology thing. I think you've got to be able to say, like, often, because I'm climbing in on the creation thing. So, well, what do you think about this? And what do you think about scientists and what they've said about this? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah.
And as soon as it becomes a thing that I have to worry about, I'll check it out. But at the end of the day, all I care about is the thing that I'm doing here, which is not a problem. So stuff like that.
I find people are very, on that particular point, people struggle to understand that I'm not interested in the science.
And they struggle, and that's a good thing. Like, I'm happy to help them struggle through that. And then on the other side, you get people that are just completely liberated because there they are, either they are scientists themselves or something, and they've had to almost like commit intellectual suicide to keep coming to church or something, and they've just not been able to voice this or be honest about, because for fear that it might contradict what they know is ultimately a very simplistic look at things. And just to be able to kind of say, well, the one is not necessarily related to you, and you might have I know we're getting down to quite a specific example now, but I think it's as wherever you can find things like that, you should use them. You should make sure
Yeah.
not to over dogmatize. So, we've got all these
Yeah.
crazy illustrations in church history where that's gone wrong and where people have said too much and said things the Bible hasn't said. Um, and then I think also just like, we are, um, you have to almost you have brace for impact a little bit. Like when you go to seminary, obviously you're going to extend your perception of things, your or university. Perhaps this is or just when you start reading, when you read opposing views, when you're not creating straw man arguments. I mean, like you're not doing it right if you're not rattled.
Yeah.
You've got
Yeah.
you've got to. I mean, that's the whole point. Like it wouldn't even be a thing if they didn't have really good arguments.
Yeah.
So like I mean, you've got to let yourself get rattled, and you got to be open about that too, to some degree. And it is difficult for pastors because sometimes, you're expected to be this kind of person who never gets rattled. But I think it's good for people to see that, and like you're
Yeah.
thinking through things, and every now and again, you've had a change of conviction on something based on something you now realize is actually wrong, and you're happy to explain it. I think just the problem becomes when you start doing that and you can't explain it. You know,
Yes.
you've always got to be able to like verbalize what the problem is. Like I think when you talk to people and they're like, I don't know, I went to university and now I'm just not a Christian. And I'm like, well, why?
Yeah. What happened?
No, well, the lecturer just said something about like Kant's existentialism, blah blah blah.
Yeah, and I just
And,
began to feel,
I just began to feel like, whoa, there's like a lot of info out there, so I'm not a Christian anymore. I'm like, well, that's
that's stupid.
probably all that did was awaken you to what already was,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's not
That's it.
entirely a bad thing. But yeah, I mean, look, if you've got a guy who's going, well, because I haven't, I'm struggling with this particular issue,
Yeah.
I'm studying history, and historically it can't be true that the resurrection is real and so forth.
Yeah.
Well, that's a real thing. So yeah, you got to find an answer to that. And if you can't, then you shouldn't be a Christian. And this
Yeah.
is what it does come down to. So, and it is a little bit of work. And people have,
Yeah.
it's if you're having a near breakdown experience because you're really investing in this, that's good, because that's what you should be doing, because this is the most important thing out there. And
One time.
you know,
Now, it's 100% the case that pastors need to go through this process, right? You have to, because you will, because just by virtue of the fact that you're going to be preaching through different books of the Bible, like you're going
totally.
to preach through Paul, you're going to preach through James, you're going to have to work that one out.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
at some, and that's just one of very many
Mm,
examples
mm,
where you're going to be thrown into the mill
yeah.
to reprocess everything. And
And
so
you
you're
can't, and you
100%, if
can't
you're a,
just leave. You realize very soon you can't just leave things to super scholars. You can't go, I will just go
no,
where the super scholars take me, because it doesn't work like that. You'll get
it doesn't
taken in
work
a
like
million.
that.
Yeah.
And that is basically just demarcating a new magisterium.
Yes.
You know, you're just your bishops and archbishops are the scholars, and it's
Mm,
just, I don't think that's right either.
mm,
Scholars are obviously very useful, but
mm,
as yeah, if they ever become magisterial rather than ministerial, it becomes a problem. But
mm,
so this is obviously a useful process for pastors, useful process for theologians and
mm,
serious students of the Bible.
mm,
But what about the average person on the street? Like if the average person in your church who just is like, you know what, God says it, I
tell
believe
me
it.
what's
That's
up.
the end of
Yeah.
it, and 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 that is it. I just want to love Jesus, crack on, tell people about him. They're not worried about any of the stuff; it doesn't phase them, and they
Mm.
just want to crack on. Good. Do you want to push them beyond that? Like, is this a process
Yeah.
that the average Christian in the pew needs to worry about?
I mean, the whole thing. I mean, you have to push to like I was saying earlier. Like I think that if someone has got, like, if any kind of pushing is leading people in a, oh well, I just don't even want to think about it, okay, just don't talk to me about that because I'm a Christian, I said I was,
Yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah, yeah,
I think it might be a good idea to just slowly, gently help them out, think through things, because it's like
yeah.
they're agitated rather than getting on with it anyway, and there's no level of
That's
true
right.
conviction that's going to come out of that. But there is this very real thing, and it's in the Bible, and I think this applies, that where you've got that guy where Jesus comes and heals him of his blindness, right? And then he gets dragged into the Pharisees' council, and they're like, "Tell me about this guy. What's going on? How could you even think this? What do you think?" And he's like, "I don't know. I have
Yeah,
no idea. I know that I was blind. Now I can see." So I already told you guys that though. So I'm not sure what is the communication breakdown,
That's
And
right. Which part of this are you failing to
and then like
understand?
drag him out, drag him back in again. But now are you saying and blah, blah, blah. Well, like yes, and then I love the way he takes a crack at them as well. Like, sure you guys went
Yeah.
to school,
Yeah. I
but
thought I
anyway,
was the blind one.
thought I was, yeah, exactly. But he's like, this is the thing, work it out. I don't know. You find him. You're supposed to be the religious experts. You tell me who he
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
All I know is
yeah,
so at that level, I mean, that is that baseline right there. So everyone, I mean, I think that's the 1 + 1 = 2.
yeah,
It doesn't matter
yeah,
how much more complicated it gets. That's real or it isn't. And it's like, you don't need
yeah.
anyone to tell you that. So I think
But
that's what the expectation is.
that's a really interesting example from scripture on two fronts, because you've got, on the one hand, you've got the blind guy. Is that Bartimaeus? Is that blind Bartimaeus?
No. Is it? Might be.
I don't
No, I
know.
don't think it
Anyway,
is.
the
No,
blind guy. You got the blind guy,
the
the
blind guy.
man born blind from birth, and he's like, here's what I know, right? And according to me, someone who can restore sight, that's a pretty obvious sign that they are
Yeah.
Messiah territory, right?
And even if not, I can still see.
but
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I got my sight,
Yeah.
so I'm good. And then on the other hand, you got the Pharisees, and they represent a different kind of view, which is an unyielding to the changes. So they're being confronted with new evidence all the time, but it just is not penetrating their theological system.
Yes.
And I guess they represent a totally closed off to this process. So
like a true blindness.
So there's a healthiness. There's a healthiness to recognizing, hey, hang on, maybe there's something I hadn't thought about. I don't know. I need to look into. Maybe there is something that changes everything else. Because the problem with, or not the problem, but the thing about theology is it is like a puzzle in the sense that if one piece is out, it's going to have a knock-on effect with loads of other pieces. Lots of other pieces are going to be out, but lots of pieces might be in the right place. And so you've got this right awkward bit where you forced a bit to fit when it isn't exactly right, and that kind of thing. And you got a bit of sky where the trees should be, and whatever. Exactly. But a lot of it may be right. And you've got the corners and you've got the boundaries, but you're just trying to work out the rest of it. Yeah. And I think what you see with the Pharisees is just a refusal to acknowledge that some of the pieces are not fit.
Exactly. The whole veiled saying thing. I mean, if you just think about how like from Genesis, from the get-go, there's this whole like, this is what just the Bible just does this. It goes, here's a story, and it's not apparent as to why this matters or what's going on there. It's quite a weird little story, and then you keep going, and it's like, wow, that's kind of interesting the way that matches up to that. And then later on, it's like, whoa, that actually full on connects to that. And then it's like the weirdness, the veiledness is meant to get you churning and meditating and processing, and until the Bible itself provides for you what it is that you've been looking for. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Michelle saying, and Jesus is full of this sort of thing as well, because, and to the Pharisees, he's saying always, he's saying something that's really profound. It's not completely off the grid for them. I mean, they if they had to give it a little bit of thought, it's highlighting that actually they might be not processing things quite as well as they thought they were. And maybe if they just stopped, they could just think about what he's saying. Like, I think what comes to mind is when he says, this body, I can't think of it as totally shooting from the hip now, but in 3 days I will resurrect this body. It's almost like he uses I remember checking it out, he uses a term that it's less connected to building. Like, you would say something different if you were building a temple, but he's almost like resuscitating. Right, so it's in English it would be like, I'm break this building down and I will resuscitate it in 3 days, kind of thing. So it's said in a way that's there's enough to just go, okay, wait a minute, he might be saying something here. And if they would just only stop and be honest, even honest enough to just go, I'm not sure what I'm doing, Lord, have mercy on me, something along those lines. Anything have like mercy
on me, sinner.
Just any, and then just, that man goes home justified. But it's this whole dogmatism that's sometimes actually the problem, not the doubt, but the dogmatism.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And also, just coming back to something you said earlier, that you can't entrust yourself to the academic magisterium.
Mm.
Um, but the other side of that is that you can't just entrust the whole burden of theological system to yourself either.
No,
So
no.
that's something you were saying earlier as well.
Mm-mm.
And so I'm wondering if, just thinking about this as confessional Christians, how do the role of confessions factor into this whole discussion about truth relativism? Like, is part of the value of being a confessional Christian that you're entrusting yourself to many minds and to an older system, many minds, many ages.
Yeah.
And you're saying, listen, there's no way I'm gonna take the burden of trying to work out the truth about the Trinity. I'm just gonna trust the creeds
Yeah.
on this one. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna follow that path because better minds, many minds for
Yeah.
longer
Yeah.
have been sorting this out. Why reinvent the wheel?
And you would
That
do that
doesn't
with
mean that I
anything.
can't. Yeah, yeah, but that doesn't mean I don't take the basic building blocks
It's not
and
going to
have a go.
contradict 1 + 1. Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah,
if someone's coming along and you're going many minds, better minds, wisdom in the council of many, 1 + 1, I don't care if you see two apples there. There,
yeah, yeah,
there are
yeah.
10 apples on that table. 1 + 1 = 10. You had it wrong the whole time. Now, that's the same concept, and but you see immediately why that's going to break down. Why? Because there is some level of resonance with things you can actually grab hold of and ascertain. There's the doctrine of the
Yeah,
perspicuity of scripture, which doesn't
yeah,
mean you see all things clearly all the time in every way, but there's
yeah,
enough clear about the Bible that upon its first reading, even, there's
yeah,
enough. It's like the hearing of the gospel. You can hear it, and it's something
totally.
resonant with the truth. It's such a profound, deep level. And we're not even talking about the spirit working to open our eyes to see that truth. But I mean,
Yeah,
that's not against the objectivity of that truth. So there it is. You're
no,
resonating with an objective truth that you are now able to see. And like, I defy anyone that's going to try and say otherwise, because it's just, I was blind. Now I can see. That's
yeah,
ultimately what's
that's it.
happening. And
Yeah,
and everything else is getting assimilated to that core, sense of truth and reality, which is very different to just saying, no, well, okay, there's a magisterium that told me to do it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and I'm not saying that everyone in, say, Roman Catholicism says that. So I don't want to
Well, it seems
paint.
that they don't say that at all.
Well,
it
yeah, but I
seems
mean,
it seems like they don't accept their magisterium.
right, right.
That's what it seems.
But even if they did, I'm not saying that that's the direct equation, because
Yeah,
there might
yeah,
be in some instances that was the case for sure. But that's the thing that we're looking at, I think. And the wisdom in the counsel of many thing is just think about how you take things on the basis of faith, at every sense, every turn in your life. I mean,
yeah,
you are just, who is not doing this? We do this from the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to bed. We are relying on the wisdom and expertise and counsel of many. And there's a way we
yeah,
just automatically process, like, yeah, I've got a choice now. I can try and reinvent the wheel and just, but you're also not letting people tell you complete maniac nonsense, So,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's just the same process, perhaps in a more focused way. And I think that that's what ultimately levels it out. But I think we should also say that, the pursuit for a completely, well, two things. We should say, number one, that it's really, really good news that we're not saved by our understanding, but by Jesus himself.
totally.
That is like
Amen.
the
Yeah,
best news ever. And then
yeah,
secondly, um, the pursuit for a really sterile, you know, oh, that's the right Bible translation. That's the
yes,
only, and oh, that's that's the right manuscript behind that one. And oh, this is the right way to do it. That pursuit for that, just that's almost fundamentalist security, which is almost coming from some sociological phenomenon rather than
yeah, that's right.
it's
Or
not even
even
like a
psychological. Yeah,
right. And that is, I think, you just got to, perhaps it would just be helpful to kill that up front and just say,
for
I
sure.
just always tell people, just read church. I mean, okay, you want to be a Christian? Good. Now just read church history. Just do it. Just
Yeah,
one overview book, anyone, pick one. So start at the beginning, work your way through 2000 years. Are you even in there? You know,
yeah.
like,
So,
take what you believe now. Are you even in there?
do you? Yeah,
Because it's so
yeah,
wild and varied and, all over the
yeah,
place and so messy and crazy. And yet this is God's church. And okay, sure, you can see exactly, looking back, I mean, people have gone too far and whatnot, but usually we can identify them, you know, even
Yeah.
if that
And
happens.
it's like, even if you ask, like, so you said, like, thank God we are not saved by the perfection of our theology. Like, you don't have to get past the doctrine exam to be saved. Okay.
Yes.
So what is the purpose then of doctrine? What is the purpose of truth? Why even bother? Like, because I think that if I understand it correctly, some folk or some representations of Eastern Orthodoxy tend to go this way. Like, actually, listen, it's all
Yes.
mystery.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
don't even bother with the
Mm.
doctrinal formulation. It's about
Yeah.
experience. It's about mystery.
Yeah.
And that seems to me like one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is that it is a doctrine exam, and that you do have to get a high degree of accuracy in order to be a genuine Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And then somewhere in between there is just then asking the question, well, what is the point of, if it is so unsettling to to think through all these kinds of things, and if it can be hard work and slow and painful and agonizing to do all this, what then is the point of it? And I think that the grand goal of everything in the Christian life is to the glory of God. It's to glorify God by becoming more like Christ, and it is that actually the truer I understand things, the more Christ-like I will become. The more my mind is renewed by right ways of thinking, the more right ways of living will follow. And it's that I'm after. It's that I want to bring glory to God by living rightly, and I live rightly by thinking rightly. And so, it's trying to keep that in focus as well. That actually you're not. The purpose of this whole exercise is not so that I can be a discernment blogger who condemns everyone online, and it's not so that, I mean, there is a sense in which where you want to know where their heretical boundaries are. You want to know what the field of play is.
Well, yes.
So
absolutely.
at what point am I not a Christian? I am now a Muslim. That you do want to know.
And
that.
as a pastor, I mean, it's your job. You want to defend the flock, and so we don't want to take away anything from that. But yeah, the way because we tend to be quite, I don't know, maybe just theologically kind of oriented at our church, and a lot of the times people that'll be different from the landscape, so they'll come in and they'll be like, whoa, it's like drinking from a fire hose kind of thing, and what's happening, they're trying to get a gulp in here and there, and then this often follows this whole like breakdown crisis thing. What is it all for? What are we doing? What is the point? And what I don't always explain it like this, but some people I know will resonate with this whole thing, in that, I mean, if you think, just take it back from almost like a Gentile Greek philosophy sort of lover of truth perspective, where really you've got Gentiles groping around in darkness, trying to figure out as best they can what is what, and just struggling to do it, and yet coming to the conclusion, along with many other cultures, that the pursuit of truth it needs no justification. It's an end to itself. It's a great virtue. It's how can it ever be otherwise? This is, we can conclude more, but no less, and so forth. And then someone gives you and it's like a thing that really matters. You conclude that it really matters, so you devote your life to an investigation of what really matters. So it's all very fair at this point, that intuitively that if to not be content, I mean, to be content with falsehood is not good. It's not a virtue. And it's not going to do anyone.
Love does not delight in
It's just one of those things that you're going to pick up on, and yet you're frustrated about I just can't figure it out, and this is terrible. And then someone comes along and gives you a way to maybe figure out what's going on here. I mean, are you ambivalent toward that? Are you sort of skeptical? What is the problem exactly? Because if it was some sort of mystery that you were trying to solve, and now you finally have your clue and you can put it together, and this is great joy. This is like, even if you don't figure the whole thing out, just to have some level of, just to be a little bit more in the light and less in the dark is again that intuitively good thing. To get the Bible, though, is really like to be thrown. It's like a floodlight. It's like a embarrassment of riches in terms of the truth, and like it's just it's got to be a pursuit of pure delight at the truth level, just that there
Yeah.
is truth. Now I have it. Now I just want to know it. There's nothing that needs to be justified about that. Now everyone's going to have different capacities and levels, and the battle's fought at different levels and so forth. No one's denying that. But just I want to discover
Yeah.
this. I mean, who needs to justify that? Number one. Number two,
Yeah.
we now know from our understanding of the truth that it is in our discovery of the truth of God that we can know God. So now it's not just about truth, but it's about the truth of God. And,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, people get pretty excited when they see some detection of potential alien life forms and so forth. I
Yeah,
remember,
totally.
someone made the analogy, like, what if we had to get this actual message, from outer space, there is now some alien life form that's communicating with us. I mean, everyone's going to be all over that, that, right?
Yeah,
And yet,
for
here
sure.
we have our maker communicating with us, in ways that are designed to draw us into an actual relationship with the one that made us, that takes care of us, that'll be with us for eternity, the one to whom we will give an account. I mean, this is really, that's theology. That's all that is. You now have the word about God that you can, the logos hatheos. You can just dive in and find out more.
Mm.
Why would you not want to do that? That's all theology is. And then
It's an act of worship. Yeah.
it's exactly, theology leads to doxology. And the thing is, it's done in that sort of like profound freedom at that level. It's like God has given us this little,
Yeah.
we're going to get so much at the end. There's something wrong though if a child goes, hey, here's this great gift.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
of Jesse, if I say, oh, this game coming out on Xbox,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's coming out next year. Here's a little preview though. They'll let you play the first level or whatever. He's not, if he says to me, I'll just catch it when it comes out, or a movie or something,
Yeah.
it's like, you're not that into it. That's basically what that means.
Yeah. It's not your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's a little bit like it's a little bit like, I know you're not into the Harry Potter films, but you get to the Harry Potter thing, and Harry has just discovered this whole new world, right? He's just discovered this whole new world filled with wizardry and all
yes,
sorts of magical secrets
right,
that he never even knew existed until a month before. And then he goes to play Quidditch. You know,
right, right.
why would you play Quidditch? It's a sport. It's a
Okay,
sport in the Harry Potter world. Okay.
thank you.
And you're like, why would you play Quidditch when there are libraries filled with books that tell you more about these secrets
Mm,
that you've only just begun? Like, surely you would devote all your time
yeah.
to uncovering every secret of this new magical world. And the
Mm,
Bible is that window into this whole new world. And when you
yeah,
become a Christian, you discover it. It's
yeah,
like Harry Potter coming out of his little cupboard, right? And
yeah.
then you're taken off to Hogwarts, and then you're just like, yeah, I'm going to go play Quidditch. It just doesn't make, that's
It's
the
messed
one
up.
part of the Harry Potter books that don't make any sense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that that's
Like, why
that
would you do that?
that makes as little sense as there being, animal forms of transformers. Like what is the deal with that even? If they're just going to be humanoids, it's bad enough.
It's
But to
bad.
bring all the other elements of,
Yeah. And then
creation
they brought in
into,
dinosaurs too. Dinosaurs.
oh, it's just like, dude,
Yeah.
so lame. Anyway,
Yeah.
we digress.
We we do.
The whole, again, like, I mean, yeah, so it just unveils that. So often that theology, why I study this, is coming from that though. It's coming
Yeah.
from that, yeah, I don't actually care about this, so will you
Yeah.
please just let me do Christianity without the getting bogged
Yeah.
down with the wanting to know about Jesus thing, because I just
Yeah.
don't care. Just
Totally.
tell me. Well, at that level, pastorally, I kind of switch on and I'm like, we need to talk. This
Yeah.
needs to, this
You
needs
should
to,
you should want this.
there's
Yeah.
there's something wrong here. Yeah. But you do it in the freedom. No one has to be a scholar. No one has to be, you're not saved by you. You don't have to first figure it out in order to get your certificate, in order to get,
Yeah.
heaven. You're free, and therefore you're able to study and joy and delight and know that, the more that you realize it's already done for you. And,
Yeah.
so that's the relationship, I think, how it should work. And then even the process of going through that rocky terrain, with those difficult questions, become a little
Mm.
bit like every other part of life that just seems like it's a wave, that you feel like, whoa, there's no way that I am going to make it to heaven through my own sinful habits, and
Yeah.
how can that be possible? And then you look to Jesus, and that's how you make it. And same thing with theology. You get through, well, what about all these things? Well, 1+1 is always going to be 1. And
Yeah.
this is the main thing, and this is, you can see, and I defy
Now, I do
anyone to
think
tell me
having that confessional identity of, and I'm not into like total subscription to a confession, but basically saying, listen, this is my confession until it can't be anymore.
oh,
Like
totally.
it is.
Yeah.
This is my confession, and it might be this. I'm Westminster until I can't be. Now I'm 69, or I'm 69 till I can't be. Now I'm Concordia.
Yeah, like, why wouldn't you do that is the question. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I don't know, it feels like such a natural process. Okay, I believe in Jesus. Okay, cool, I'm a Christian.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not the only one, not today, not in the history of the church. So
Totally.
where, which part of this family do I fit in? Let me find my, where am I? And then you go looking around, you're like, whoa, definitely not that one. Is there another
Yeah.
one? Because otherwise I read something wrong. And you're like, oh, thank goodness, and I didn't read that wrong. There are a whole bunch of guys that see this the way I see it, and yet they say that we're all one family, and so it's cool. So we'll just keep going with that one, and then you read it, and it's got a lot of stuff. Like we always tell people coming into membership, the goal is not to master the confession before becoming a member of a confessional church. The goal is to just go, what is scaring you in that confession? Is there anything that's going like, this is blatantly weird? Deal with that, and if and let the rest is called discipleship. You just over the years will learn more about those things that other people have, through greater minds and through more minds and through many years, have come to hammer out the way that they've hammered out, and they themselves might have got it wrong. They would be willing to admit that, but that's their best shot. And again, that's not the 1+1 thing that they're admitting they could get wrong, but it's it's on the table as a here's where the core doctrines of the faith lie. Here's what we're totally sold on.
Yeah.
These are the things of our distinctives in our denomination. So obviously we're just by admission of the fact that other people are also Christians, you're willing to say, well, this is not the make or break moment, So I mean, it's just a journey at that level. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, we've made it sound maybe a little bit more pleasurable than it often is for people, but at the same time, that's the core of it. I really do believe that. It's that.
Well, I mean, it's partly because the way it confronts, the average Christian is through things like suffering. So like you'll get hit with suffering.
Yeah.
And that will cause you to reevaluate,
is God
your
good?
beliefs.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's say you're buying into like the health and wealth prosperity stuff. That's going to rock that boat for a good reason,
Yes.
And so but that's or like, I don't know, you become really good friends with a Muslim guy at work, who has this real sincere love for God,
right,
or for his God, and then you're like, like it was one thing when it was just an idea out there. It's another thing when I'm looking at this dude I love in the face, and that's and again, that's healthy. It's a good rock.
It wouldn't be real otherwise, it wouldn't be a real working with the truth otherwise. So good. All right, sweet. Well, that's not what I wanted to talk about.
We can talk about what you want to talk about now.
No, we can't. We've got to be gentle. We got to take this one segment at a time. See how charitable I'm being, though. I'm just going, what do you want to talk about every time? I think I did this last time as well, and we did talk about what you wanted to talk about.
Very kind. Although it did take you a little while to warm up with all your
I very rarely do want to talk about what you want to talk
about. Well, I didn't want to talk about current affairs. I know that is not a thing that's on the table.
It's not a thing. Don't care about what's current. But what is current is my book.
Hey,
it is quite current.
Hey,
it's a little topic that keeps popping up. It's current.
It's getting mad reviews, Mike.
Getting mad reviews.
That's not your book. Is that your book?
There it is, right there. So,
you know what? And it's not as big as I thought it was. You can.
So I tell you what,
that's an afternoon's read. Come on.
We thought what we got to do is just work through this, because I did not write this for normal people. I say that in the preface. I know normal people have tried to read it and they've done a great job, but I've just I didn't write it for you. Sorry. I wrote it for academics, and I wrote it for pastors who are super academic, and I wrote it speaking in academic ways, and so whatever. So it's not a great book for everyone. I'll say that up front. And yet the topic is good and the material is relevant.
It's actually a super important topic.
Yeah. And so we thought, this being this podcast and all, we probably should, just while the topic's hot and while the print is still, while the ink is fresh, just translate it a little bit so that we're just able to therefore make it a workable thing. It'd be a cool book to have, I think, if you knew what was in it and you wanted to go and just grab some info, because it does give a lot of like overview info, who's who in the zoo kind of stuff. So at that level, it's quite nice to know about and just have it at disposal and grab it if you need it. But be nice. It would be nice. I would love this for all books.
Well, I'm trying to put a lot of pressure on Mike to actually write a popular version of his book.
Yeah, so I'm not going to do that, I don't think. But what I'm doing is I'm taking like a jiu-jitsu move. I'm taking your desire to put some pressure on me, and I'm actually putting pressure back on you, because I know that unless we work through my book on this podcast, you're never going to read that thing.
No, that's not true. I would.
So I would like to take this opportunity to say, even Dad has read my book, and Mom, yes.
All right, I'm duly rebuked. I will read it. I will read it.
And Dad did say to me, I got to be honest, it's a bit of a tough read, but there we go. Well done.
One time.
If only you could just have half the chutzpah of your father, then you would do great things. Man. Anyway,
Mike, I'll read it.